Okay. All right. So welcome everyone to tonight's session titled Tips for Preparing for the New ABGC exam. Really excited to have four distinguished panelists who successfully passed the most recent exam in December 2023. I think it'll be a really exciting discussion tonight. We'll be hearing from them and sort of their advice for all of us in terms of how to prepare for the new exam. I'm here with Lynsey Rodriguez, who's the co-moderator. So we'll be asking questions of the panelists. And kind of after this brief introduction, we'll ask our questions and then open it up to questions from the audience. I know there's a number of people in attendance tonight who are taking their exam possibly in March or maybe even in August. And so definitely opportunity for you to ask these panelists any questions that are on your mind, and then we'll conclude with some final thoughts in the last 5 minutes of tonight's session. Just a few ground rules. Tonight we won't be discussing or any specific content that's on the ABGC exam. That's technically not allowed. So if there's any questions about that, Lynsey or I will step in and essentially just say we won't be talking about that. And audience members, when we get to that portion of the session, if you'd like to ask a question, you can either raise your hand and ask the question, or you can type the questions into the chat. And then Lynsey or I are happy to ask those questions of our panelists. Okay, so these are tonight's panelists. What I'd like to ask everyone to do is maybe we can just go kind of clockwise, starting with Emily, then Amanda, then Anusha, and then Heather, in terms of you guys can just introduce yourself briefly, and then we will go ahead and start asking our questions.
Certainly. So sorry about that noise. My husband was like, "Can I have my laptop?" So I tossed it to him. So my name is Emily Hirschman. I graduated from Augustana University, both in Sioux Falls and San Diego, and I currently work as a student counselor, actually in the lab, so a laboratory student counselor at Phoenix Children's.
Thanks, Emily. My name is Amanda. I am a pediatric and cancer genetic counselor at UCLA, and I graduated June of 2023 from UC Irvine. Anusha was my classmate and lovely study buddy. And I took the boards exam for the second time, this new cycle that they opened up after all the glitches, so I can answer those pre and post type of questions.
Yep, Amanda was my study buddy too. Which is really great. My name is Anusha. I am currently working at Stanford Healthcare in the Bay Area. I graduated the class before Amanda at UC Irvine, so I took a lot longer after graduate school to take the exam, which might be where I'm more of an expert in questions, I guess. And then also did the retake. So I took the exam in August and did not pass, and then I took it in December and did. And I work mainly with adults. So cardio adults means that it's a really specific field, and it made it difficult, I think, to study for the exam since I'm not working like that in clinic most of the time. And if anyone else struggles with that, I would love to hear, because I might have hopefully have some help here too.
Hey everyone, I'm Heather. I graduated from Indiana State University in May of 2023. I currently work at Banner MD Anderson as a cancer genetic counselor, and I actually met Emily one time in office hours during the StudyRare study session. So we've become buddies now.
Absolutely. And we just also both so happen to find out that we both worked in Arizona, which was amazing stuff. We've all got some
small world here.
Study teams, yeah. Alrighty.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's so nice to see also the connections that have been fostered, which I think for many of us we're at the beginning of our careers, myself included, and so my hope is that these connections are going to continue to last throughout our our careers. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And so all of the panelists plus Lynsey and I should sort of, you'll see our videos, and then we'll go ahead and start asking the questions of our panelists. So, okay. All right. And then, okay, so we have so the first question I'd like to ask is, what resources did you use to study for the ABGC exam? And which of these resources did you find to be most helpful? And yeah, we can start with Emily. I see you've unmuted.
Yeah, well, no, I unmuted in the sense of, would it be most helpful for all four of us to answer each thing, or for a couple of us to take each one? I just want to make sure that there's enough time for everyone. So what would be most helpful? You're in charge.
Yeah, I'd say, at least for this first question, maybe we'll give everybody an opportunity
Yeah.
to answer, and then we'll kind of see where we're at with time. So
Beautiful. So resources that were most helpful. Honestly, and probably I'm probably the outlier in this, but I think for me, my most helpful resources were actually going back and reading my course notes. And I mean that in the sense of, as soon as I started studying for boards, I was given guidebooks and PowerPoints and all of these things, and they were beautiful and amazing, and they're very, very helpful. But I feel like some of it, I kind of, it's a while 2 years, right? And so I lost sight a little bit about like what I already had learned. And so what was super helpful for me my second round, because this is my second round as well, is obviously, use all the resources, but it can certainly be really overwhelming when you're handed 100, Google or things. And so like, remember what your program taught you. Is they're accredited for a reason. Go back and know your lectures. That's my answer.
I can go next. Thanks for sharing, Emily. I agree with a lot of what you said, in the sense that I think ultimately the most helpful thing for me was like generating my own information from the resources I use. So not just like reading things, but like making my own study guides or flashcards or something or another. I use a lot of resources. I sort of thought through these questions earlier and wrote them down so I could put them in the chat for people, if that's helpful. But my best resource, like that I was handed after school, was by far the StudyRare course. So congrats to Daniel and Lynsey for that. You guys administer like an amazing course and community. But outside of that, I also used the boards review course that's available like for genetic counseling students. Honestly, I didn't think that was super, super helpful, but I think it's a good structure on how to like orient the topics that you're studying. Lectures from school, all those picturized videos that you'll see floating around on YouTube playlists. I used the GC Genius cards and study guide. Thompson & Thompson was really, really helpful, actually. The Green Book, internet resources like gene reviews, or like government websites about like ethics and IRB stuff, and consenting. And then I also found a genetic counseling statistics course through University of Minnesota that has like 25 days of modules, and it basically takes you through quant concepts, like from very, very basic probability laws to like advanced Bayes problems in a 25-day format. And I found that really helpful because that's a tough area for me. My favorite resource the second time around studying, though, is Thompson & Thompson, actually. So I use that to study things that I felt that I didn't enjoy studying, like embryology, because the chapters in Thompson & Thompson are actually really fascinating if you have not read it. So I will paste that list.
I think my resources align pretty well with Amanda's because we studied together. So I'll go next. Amanda showed me the UMN statistics course. It was super helpful. I would really recommend that for anyone struggling with quant. And it also is just sort of satisfying to pass a course while you're taking this. And then while you're studying, I think I'm going to I'm not going to focus on as many resources because I think Amanda and Emily hit on a lot of really good ones. And Amanda put that list in the chat. So I think that's a really good place to start. But something Emily sort of touched on is just being overwhelmed with information. And that's how I felt too, especially after failing the first time. I was told by a lot of people, like, oh, wait, here, maybe you don't have the right resources. Let me give you mine. And I really appreciated it just from a like trying to amp me up again perspective. But I think what was most helpful for me was figuring out a way to organize my own thoughts. And I used Notion to create a study plan because it just looked nice and it made me feel a little bit more put together. And Amanda helped collaborate on that. And then I also started using Obsidian, which is just, it's a software that you can pay for, but I just used the free version. And what I liked about it is if you tag, I would do one condition a day. So I would just flush out everything I knew about that condition using my memorization mostly, but then I would pull from online, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting? Gene reviews, which Lynsey talks about all the time. It is actually really helpful. I think what's on Gene reviews is going to be, we had a previous classmate say that what was on Gene reviews is kind of the depth that the board exam asks for, and I would agree. So if you can't get your answer on Gene reviews, maybe that's more of a sign to you that it's not something you necessarily need to go down a rabbit hole to find. And that's what Obsidian was super helpful for. You can tag very specific things in each condition, and then it pops up with a network of how they're related. So if I clicked on my intellectual disability hashtag, it would show me all of the conditions that had that as a symptom. So just from that aspect, from organizing thoughts, that was a really good one. It was also helpful to review a couple weeks before I took the exam, just so I could see how each condition was connected and then remember which ones shared specific symptoms if they came up.
Yeah, and I'll kind of reiterate some resources that were already named. I do feel like this course was definitely like the best resource that I used, especially to study for this updated exam. I also used the Etsy book as well, the Green Book, and honestly, lots of practice tests too, just ones that were like passed down to me. Use those just to kind of get in the zone of like what types of questions would be asked and things like that. And also the Natera and Ambry sponsored sessions, those were pretty helpful. And I just learned that they have updated ones, that are, geared towards this new content outline. So those would definitely be good resources too.
That's really great to hear. And yeah, I think it's great to hear both in terms of the actual resources as well as kind of the methods for organizing those resources. I think probably equally as important as well, having a good system for just for keeping everything organized, because there is so much information. So absolutely. Lynsey, you have a next question?
Yeah, and I also just wanted to quickly comment. I love the variety of resources that everyone has shared, and you named some that I've never heard of too. So thank you for bringing those up. That's wonderful. So question number 2, were there any topics that you found particularly challenging when studying, and how did you address those challenges? And I'll put it in the chat as well if you want to take another look.
So the clockwise.
Yeah, we keep going clockwise.
Yep. The hardest thing to see on social life. Says sometimes felt like I could.
Sorry, Emily, you're cutting in and out a lot.
Everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Better? Yeah. Okay. As I unmute my computer. No, so I think that for me, what was the most challenging to study was definitely psychosocial, because it's super easy. I wouldn't say easy, but there is so much, there are Quizlets out there, there's resources out there, and it's really, really easy to say like, this question was answered this way, so I'm going to answer it the same way. And I kind of, was like, I don't know the phrase, kicking myself in the face, the foot, whatever. Because the first time that I took the boards, I really felt like, oh, well, this really seems similar to what they asked me from what I found online. and I would answer it that way. And truthfully, with psychosocial, for me at least, there was no way to study. It really comes down to, honestly, strategy, in the sense of like, and Lynsey, you were the one who taught me this actually, so bless you. What would I actually do? What would a perfect scenario, perfect world that doesn't rain or have umbrellas or even need them ask you? That's how you answer it. And so that's kind of where I really feel like changed for me. Obviously, content is hard, genetics and stuff, but that's memorization. But for me, the biggest thing was really just don't try to memorize psychosocial. Just look at it in the sense of you're in a perfect world, which is so hard, especially when you're sitting for a standardized exam. But welcome to a perfect world in a painful exam. Yeah, that's my best one.
Definitely very, very challenging. So I second that. For me, areas of difficulty, like I already mentioned, were like embryology, prenatal, hemoglobinopathies, imprinting disorders, you name it, the hard stuff I like really struggle with. So for me, I had to find ways to study those things that felt enjoyable versus just like hammering it tooth and nail, like the boring, like, gene reviews version. Like I had to try to like build my own like study guide about each condition or things like that. Like I said, Thompson and Thompson was really helpful. And then in some sense, I did like have to hammer it tooth and nail, sometimes like reviewing it every single day until like I could actually diagram out like alpha thalassemia and the different like deletions or the mechanisms for all the imprinting disorders. So just like the rote practice of it every day, I think was helpful in explaining it to other people. So I would explain like the mechanisms to like my mom or friends that I was talking to that are outside of genetics. And then additionally, I feel like risk assessment, my first time taking it was somewhere I had to improve. So every time I saw a pedigree, I would practice different like risk calculations and things like that. And I tried to do like a quant question every day. So I think there was a point where Anusha and I were like working through quant questions like daily and then talking through them afterwards and the parts that we got confused on.
Yeah, that resource that Amanda put in the chat, the Medical Genetics and Genomics board book, super helpful. Some of the questions aren't exactly board exam questions, but some of them are recall questions, and talking through them, I think, was the most important piece for me. So that's what Amanda and I did. We would do 10 questions at the end of each of our individual study sessions, whatever it was, and then come together and talk about those. And just hearing someone else's thought process, if you got a question wrong, was really helpful. Or if you got a question right, were you able to explain why? So just that piece really emphasized it. Also, what Amanda said about teaching other people who don't know genetics. My roommates were troopers throughout this. I came to them every single morning or evening and would just explain the condition I had learned that day, or the 2 or 3 conditions that I had been struggling with. And then they would ask questions, and then I would try to answer those questions. And if I couldn't, then I realized that was the part that I needed to focus a little bit more on for the rest of the week. For topics that were particularly challenging, I agree with Emily. Psychosocial was really tough. Those are the ones that I think it's really helpful to talk through with someone, especially like when you're just staring at the question for 5 minutes. I feel like you can get lost in it. So that helps you take a step back and realize what it is that they're actually asking, which is something that Lynsey always mentions in the StudyRare sessions and is really helpful.
I think for me, I want to second what Emily said earlier about how the questions on the boards, it's about what you should do, maybe not what your like first instinct is. And so something that our program director told us when approaching like psychosocial questions, for instance, is assess and be direct. So a lot of times when I would read one of those, I would look at what are options that, kind of fit, one of those two options. And then that was maybe not 100% of the time, but most of the time how I would pick my answer. And in addition, topics that I found challenging were also imprinting. I think no GC anywhere fully understands imprinting 100% of the time. So that was actually something, the first time I took the exam, I felt like that was like also one of my weaker sections. So something I tried to watch, and actually the course did a really good job of, having specific pedigrees and kind of challenging me to try and practice answering those questions. And I think another challenging topic was actually research. Research was something after I took the exam in August, I was not expecting there to be so much on there. So that was something I went to the Green Book as well as, the study course to kind of learn that information a little bit better, because that was something going into the exam the first time I just, didn't have enough of that under my belt. And I would also say hemoglobinopathies too, or something the board exam loves, and definitely good to review too, because those can be tough.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And it is, I think we're hearing some common themes in terms of sort of topics that tend to be challenging. And I think they're just universally challenging because they're not straightforward. So the imprinting disorders, we heard about embryology, for example, as well. So these are complex topics, but the boards likes to, that's potentially what they like to ask about it, so great. So in terms of one more question from us, and then we're going to open it up to the group. So is there any advice that you would give to someone preparing to take their exam, say either March or in August of this year?
I'm gonna start on this because I feel very strongly about
I'm
it.
so excited that you were ready. So I was like, it's clockwise. I want to think. So take
Okay,
it.
great. Okay, cool.
You're number 12 now.
It's mostly because I struggled so much having some motivation to study for the exam the first time, and it showed in my score. And I think this time around, I was like, okay, I am just going to study as if this is my absolute passion. Like studying for the ABGC exam is what I want to do for the rest of my life, which it's not. But this way, it motivated me to actually learn the material and enjoy it a little bit more. And Amanda and I talked about after we took the exam just how much we thought that the positive mindset of it really shifted how we performed. So it's the reason that I really want to emphasize that. And figuring out if you're a morning person or an afternoon person or an evening person, what is your most productive time of the day? Because mine is 6 a.m. and I wouldn't have figured that out if I had not just like had nightmares about the ABGC exam and couldn't sleep. So I think maybe bypass the nightmares and try to figure out when you can get the most work done and actually remember it. I found that when I was working full time, if I came back at the end of the day, I was just exhausted and it wasn't going to get done, and I would come up with some excuse. I also, the last bit is balance is really important. And Lynsey talks about this, but the first week that I went into studying, I kind of went ham and really just was studying for like 3 or 4 hours a day, and it was not sustainable. So I signed up for a soccer league, and I decided to start training for a marathon at the same time. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it really helped with just like the endorphin rush each time that I would sit back down to study. I wouldn't feel antsy and fidgety because I knew that following that I would go be active. Really recommend it.
I guess I'm gonna like reverse the clock. That was the most beautiful and amazing answer. However, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate just in the sense of it just depends who you are as a person. So for me, and I love that you embrace study, and that was probably way healthier. So I took the boards the first time and I failed, and I was really mad. I had studied all summer long. I had just moved to a new place. And I was really sad of like, I gave up all of this and then I failed anyways. Like I was pissed, low-key pissed. And so I channeled that in a different way in the sense of I wish that I probably, better advice before me. However, the experience altogether, it's it can be challenging and hard. And so I guess I would express, lean into whatever you're feeling. If you're mad about it, like lean into it. If you're sad, I cried a lot, lean into it. And that's if it goes bad, but even when it goes good, I had so much after the fact anxiety of just like, I've been doing this for 6 months. Like, what do I do with my life now? And so that sucked. So I guess just to touch on that, lean into your emotions. It's not fun. It's a not fair exam, low key, not fair. But that said, my best advice, I think absolutely, what was just said, Anusha, what you just said, find balance, because my second round, because I was angry, I was like, I'm not giving it all of my time again. I'm going to bake banana bread and I'm going to bake blueberry bread and I'm going to go on walks with my dog. And I don't know if that actually helped me, but it helped me at least when I was hitting submit at the end. I was like, I'll be fine. I'll go bake bread later. And so just make sure that just take care of yourself. Like, it's a hard exam. It's tough. It's a trick. Take care of you. But also just like, if you're mad, if you're sad, if you're whatever, just like lean into what you're feeling, because it's really hard, but you've come so far, is what I'd say. Just remember that.
Thank you guys for sharing. I like the two different perspectives. I definitely tried to do the nice perspective. So I think that hearing the mad perspective is really helpful though, because I was also really pissed.
Pissed.
I'll chime in on something different then, because I think you guys covered both of those things really well. I feel like approaching your study, like studying in a really structured way, is helpful. I mean, just like anything else in your life, like this requires your time and your dedication. And if you don't have a plan for your studying, you're like, if you don't have a plan for anything else, you're generally not setting yourself up for success. And Anusha and I, like we mentioned before, structured like this month, like we had like a calendar, each week had like a theme, and then each day had sort of like these specific topics. But I think above and beyond that, it's important to set like goals and objectives for those specific topics. So what I did at the start of each week was I looked at the topics that were sort of on like our daily calendar, and I asked myself like how I was going to address those goals, like what resources specifically I was going to use, versus getting to that day and being like, oh my God, now I have to find a resource. Like, I don't know where to start in all of those things. So try to set yourself up for success as much as you can. And then I think also just being cognizant of if you are burnt out. Like sometimes we would have a study call schedule and I would just be like, I'm just like exhausted. I need to literally fall asleep. And I would just tell Anusha that, and she was like, okay, like go to bed, and vice versa. So I think doing that and cutting yourself some grace is a good thing to do.
Yeah, and I agree definitely with kind of making a plan, having like goals, like even if it's at the end of the week, I want to review, this lecture, this lecture, this lecture, or like what I did the first time was, I utilized the UPIT like study course. So I made like in my planner actually for the whole month, like I wrote down each night, like what lectures I'm going to work on and stuff like that. And so I would recommend doing something similar with whatever resources you're going to use. So for example, like over the weekend, write down, I'm going to do this practice exam, and then Sunday, like I'll grade it and then go through, what topics I could, brush up on a little bit more. So definitely like intentional studying. So having like a plan and being able to give yourself grace when it doesn't happen, because obviously life happens. There are things that go on in all of our lives that, you can't just study all the time. But on the other arm, it's like also be disciplined about it too. Maybe don't be going out every single night. Like if you have goals of what you want to study by the end of the week, by the end of the month, really, really try and do that. And I will also say, this season in your life, it's temporary. Studying for boards, I'll echo what everyone else said, like it sucks. The exam, like this isn't fun. But just try and study as if it'll be the only time you take it. I think all of us, on the panel, we did have to take it more than once. So after I found out I didn't pass, I was like, okay, I'm just going to study as if this will be the last time that I take it. And I think just having that mindset will also help you too as you go along, just treating this as this will be the last time I need to study this. So that way, when you hit submit, you can really feel like I put everything into this that I could, instead of looking at it as, oh, I should have done this, or I should have worked more on this, you know?
Yeah, I'm actually, since Heather said that, I'm going to amend my previous answer. I actually don't think it's a good idea to think of the ABGC exam being your like life's mission. I would agree. I think it's good to think of it as like this is the time that you're going to pass and constantly build yourself up to that confidence, because it's super important. But the like making it something that you enjoy while you're mad, while you're struggling, super important.
Crafting that mentality is so important. Like I even put in my calendar, like I am passing this test today. Like it was a calendar event. Many of us are calendar people. So doing that, but I was also going to add that even if you can't fully like wrap yourself around being super nice to the exam, you can at least be curious about the information. We're all really privileged to be learning this information, and we joined this field for a reason, and we're all very passionate about it and our patients for a reason. So for me, thinking about the information as something that would always be useful for my career was really helpful.
Yeah, I would just like to, I know I'm not a panelist, but oh my gosh, all of you have touched such like a chord in me, and I've gone through all the same things, and the advice that you've given is just like spot on, chef's kiss, great. And I think the other thing that like I personally struggled with is having a romanticized idea of how I would study. Like I'm gonna have the perfect plan. I'm gonna like carve out this time, and it's gonna be from here to here, and I'm gonna like be all comfortable in my comfy like study clothes, and I'm just gonna like go hard. But there's not a perfect scenario. And if you're getting to the point to where that's like holding you back from starting to study, that's when you know you just have to dive in and go for it. Even if you're not sure, if you have the right resources at the beginning, if you're not sure, just go for it and do it. Like that's the only way it's gonna get done.
Sorry, Daniel, you were
No,
here. I'm
go
so,
ahead.
no, I
Go
just
ahead,
wanted
please.
to add, you guys, those were all the best answers. No, my only extra thought would be, for those of you who are taking it in March, amazing, love it. However, for anybody who is about to graduate and then start a new job, and then take it in August, or I don't know if it's September now, as everyone said, like give yourself so much grace, because I was in a position of a new job and it was so hard, and I was like, I'll take the boards and graduate and start a new job, move to a new city, and just that's really, really tough to do. I'm not saying you can't do it, but just if it doesn't happen for you the first time, it didn't happen for me. I started a new job, I moved states, I failed. I was able to, but just like, it's okay, give yourself balance. There's so much change, especially in our network, in our market. So just, that's all. Yeah. Be aware.
Yeah. No, I think this was my favorite question out of all of them. I think that all the answers are really remarkable, and I think that they really hit on kind of three key points. So one being like to have a plan, right? To be structured about kind of your approach, whatever that plan is, even if it's not the absolute optimal plan, just kind of get started with it, and then you'll kind of adjust as you go along. And then having passion for the subject, right? Whether it's love or hate, like you're really motivated to get through this, because as was said, I mean, it's definitely an arduous process. This is hard. Not everybody can do this, right? Not everybody can become a genetic counselor and master many of these abstract concepts. And then the third being balance. So, wanting to find a balance between sort of your study, but also your personal life. I think that's definitely really important whenever you're doing anything in your life, and that includes studying for exams. So with that, I know we're a little bit behind, but I do want to open it up to questions from the audience. So if anybody has questions, feel free to raise your hand. I'll take a look at the chat here in just a second to see if anybody's put anything in the chat. But feel free to raise your hand and just go ahead and unmute as well. Let's see. Okay, there's a question from Jackie. So were you working full-time during study or retakes? And if so, how did you incorporate study time? And did you feel like it was enough to be better prepared to answer the questions the second time around? So it's a great question.
I guess I'm planning the clock. So I'm like, I guess it's me first. So for me, the first time I took it, I was working full time. I was in a unique position. I was starting up a lab, and I'm the only genetic counselor at my lab. And so I couldn't really advocate for study time, and that kind of like kicked me in the face a bit. There's the term. I didn't advocate for it because I was in a new position. And I failed. And then it came down to my contract said I had a year to pass the board, so I had to really like go to my managers. Keep in mind, I'm the only GC in my position, but I had to advocate for myself and say, hey, like you all want me to do this, I need more time off. So they were able to grant me 2 days remote to study. But I guess my advice would be like, if you start in a position, most of the time, genetic counselors, if you start in a position with a bunch of them, you'll be supported. I started in a position that I was the only one, and so they had no idea. And so I wish that I would have advocated for myself sooner, because I was trying to like show up as a new grad, show up as like a new hire. And then I failed, and and I had to experience the anxiety of job loss. I've been full-time the whole time. However, just ask them to let you have time. If they won't, like, and it's part of your hiring stuff, that's they will.
Yeah, I was also working full-time. That's a very different perspective from like mine, because I am on a team of GC, so they were just kind of like, you know, do what you need to do, figure it out. I wasn't really monitored. So I think, that being said, my second time around, work was like crazy by that time. Like my clinic load was full blown. Like I couldn't really study in the middle of the day like I did when I first started. So finding a time that works for you, like I would try to do at least 30 minutes before work. I know it's hard to get up a little bit earlier, but if you can do like, I'm gonna at least do 30 minutes before work and at least 30 minutes when I get home, like setting like a minimum amount, and then anything you can give above and beyond that. And I do feel like it was enough to be better prepared the second time around, but I think it was because my time was spent very intentionally. Like I had a very specific idea of what I was going to do with those 30 minutes. And I see somebody further down put a question about creating like a comprehensive study guideline. One way that I did that, in addition to kind of structuring things around the board's review like course topics, was to look at the content outline from the ABGC exam and make sure that I was like hitting things from the content outline in those specific subdomains with my study plan.
Yeah, I'll also kind of go through my study routine too. So I was working full time as well. So, you know, just trying to balance studying and, you know, being present at your job too. I was the only new GC on my team, but luckily my supervisor was very understanding about, you know, if I'm done with, you know, my cases or documentation, like feel free to study at work. So I utilized that a lot. But for me, I found I studied the best like after work. So what I would do is try and make a goal, like when I was first starting out, like maybe it would be an hour and I'd work up to like 2 hours. And then like the week of the exam, I actually took a day off 2 days before I took the exam. And that was honestly really nice just to kind of slow things down. And I just like spent the day kind of studying, looking over things. So if you can, you know, try and save up like PTO or sick time, like for something like that, like try and make a plan to do something like that. I know someone else, she took off like a week or so. I personally didn't have that much to afford in terms of time off, but I would highly recommend doing something that week, just taking off a little bit of time. And then really quickly, I saw a question in the chat about did I ever take a like full length, like 4-hour practice exam. So I never found a practice exam that was 200 questions. I found ones that were 100 questions. So I would stack 2 of those in one day, just so I could get the feeling of like, you know, staying in my chair for 4 hours, like not like getting up, taking a break, like just trying to treat it as the actual exam day. And I think it kind of helps like build up your mental stamina. Now, with that being said, the first time I took a practice exam, I did like maybe a 50 question, 100 question. Like I definitely didn't start with 200 ones, but I would say, you know, you can work up to that and at least try once just so that you know how it feels. And that's something I would do over the weekend when I had more time.
Yeah, is it okay if we jump to a MJ's question? Because I think it's a really important one. I specifically, so I went around asking my classmates who I knew took it twice, what they did differently between the first and second take, because I was a nervous wreck, or maybe anxious is a little bit better. I was an anxious wreck after not passing the first time, which if you didn't pass the first time, you're not alone. We've talked about it at length here, so I'm sure you can understand that other people are going through it too. One of my classmates had really solid advice. She said that when you're looking at different conditions, don't just memorize all of these details about the condition. Really try and figure out what makes it different from a different one, different but similar one. And I think that saved me on more than one question on the exam. It was maybe the best advice that I got, because it's how I viewed any material that I was taking in while studying. And the other thing is, like, strike that balance between not being too hard on yourself, but not going too easy. Before the first take, I was way too easy on myself. And I kind of did exactly what Heather said not to do, and was like, oh, I can spend social time with my friends. I feel like that's fine. I know this topic pretty well. I didn't know the topic pretty well, and it showed. So the second time around, I was a little bit more disciplined. I said, hey, I don't want to say no to your ask to hang out, friend, but can we maybe chat for half an hour at this cafe? And then for the next 2 hours, I'm just going to be studying next to you. And my friends and your friends will be very receptive to that. They want you to pass. So it's okay to say no to some opportunities.
I'll add something logistical. The first time I did not have accommodations, and the second time I got time extended accommodations. I don't know what that will look like with the new testing vendor and the process of that, but I found it incredibly, incredibly helpful. So if you're like thinking about getting accommodations, just do it. Like, go through the process. It doesn't hurt anything. You have nothing to lose by trying to get them. I personally think it's absurd to answer the amount of questions that we have to in 4 hours. And it really, really, really helped me my second time around. And I saw an incredible difference in my score.
I feel like I am devil's advocate tonight. I think that both of you said just such amazing things, but just to throw in a different perspective, I had accommodations my first time. And if anyone needs help getting them, the pages, the 16 or 17 page in the ABGC guidebook, it's not correct. You send into PCH. I've been sent documents to get them from previous students. So if anyone needs help how to get them, or I can send to Lynsey or Daniel, accommodations based on ABGC, not correct. That said, I got accommodations my first time, and I feel like I was very close to passing. I wouldn't say the reason I didn't pass, but I had extra time at the end, and I went back and I second guessed myself on everything, on like a lot of things. So I would just warn you not to. Keep in mind, I had accommodations the second time, and get yourself time. Absolutely 100% vouch for that, but just be aware of, like, use that time carefully. You know what you know. I went back and I changed so many answers that I knew, like a fragile X question of like the most basic question. I went back and I changed it, and I'm like, why? And there's so much, I don't want to say trauma, but just like there's so much pressure sitting in that like little thing with people around you and earplugs and clicking. And so just, if you get extra time, get it if you need it. And if you need help getting it, I've got a document on how to get it. But that said, I've had it both times. I finished my second exam when I passed, not like my first one. I finished my second exam and I didn't need the time. I had it anyways, but just like, if you get it, just don't second guess yourself. Like if you're curious about something, like, you know this, you went to school for 2 years for this, remember that, like, you know it, don't just, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's sort of what you use the time for. Like advice that I've heard in general is you shouldn't be changing your answer unless you have a really good reason that you can justify to yourself. So for me, I used it to like kind of go back and do really complex risk calculations that I definitely didn't have time to. There was some like tricky pedigrees and things like that. So I think using your time wisely, like I prioritize the questions to go back to first, and then, you know, like having a plan how you're going to use your extra time.
No, I think that's the smartest thing. I wish I knew that yeah. And for me, I had no idea. I was just like, I've got extra time, I'm going to go back through everything. And so if you have extra time, absolutely get the accommodation. But Amanda, I think you're so right, is I used it wrong the first time. So definitely, yeah, no, you're smarter.
And it's so hard on the day. Like you can tell yourself, you know, how you want to do things, but the day of, you know, you're full of adrenaline, you're nervous, you're in a room full of all these other people taking different exams. So it's like your mind kind of just like shoves all that out the door. Yeah.
You've had your photo taken. Yeah. No, it's not a fun.
Right.
It's like going to the airport.
Yeah, exactly.
And sitting down to at the airport with the anxiety to test like everything, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I just wanted to say there was a question about like how did the timing like test day feel for that? My first time I actually ran out of time. So I finished the exam, but I was going through and checking all the ones that I flagged, and I unfortunately like ran out of time. So when I took it the second time, one of the things I wanted to be more intentional about was, you know, reading questions quicker, and kind of like what you were saying, Emily, like if you know the question, like don't go back and second guess. Like,
don't flag it.
You know,
don't flag it.
Like
I flagged everything. Don't flag it.
Right. Like if you're sure about it, like don't necessarily go back to it if you don't have time. Just kind of be like, okay, final answer, move on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I just want to like let everyone who maybe hasn't taken it know, or a weird thing for me that I had about a heart attack about. So you'll finish it, and I thought it would say like pass fail right on the screen, because in August we knew that it wouldn't. You will be given a 20-item questionnaire about your experience in the facility. And I was like, it was good, like let me through, like and then I will say, but just heads up, I was Heather and I studied together, and she took it before me, and I was like, why didn't you tell me that? And I was grumpy. So just heads up, after you hit submit, you've got to spend 20 questions talking about how the facility is. Just I was grumpy. Trauma warning. That's all.
Rise.
See, so anyone else have thoughts about kind of their feelings going into the most recent exam? Like, did you feel good? You feel nervous? How was that feeling?
I think I finally felt good going into it, and if you can't tell, I like planning, but I had a plan for my testing morning and everything. Like I had a pump up playlist, I had my breakfast all ready like ahead of time and all that stuff, and I like got ready for the exams. Like I did my hair, I wore something nice, like I smiled in my photo, which was very different from my first experience. My first one looks like a jail mugshot. So I would encourage you to like feel good about yourself going into the test, and like it felt like a game at that point for me. Like I felt like excited to try to kind of answer the question. So I think that attests to like building that mentality over time of making yourself feel good about it.
Yeah, I agree. Please smile in your photo. It shows up in the corner every single page of the exam. And the first time I didn't smile, and I was just staring at this awful photo of myself, and I can't help but think it kind of impacted my performance a little bit. So that I definitely agree with Amanda on that. I also had all of my friends send me voice memos pumping me up that morning, because I knew that I wasn't going to read every single text, but I could listen to it as I was driving to the testing center. And that really helped, just like hearing their voices cheering me on. And I forgot that I had done that too. So it took me by surprise, and it was sort of just like it kind of felt like my birthday a little bit. So I would recommend that.
I feel like I'm just, oh my gosh, ladies, you're the most beautiful. I smiled in my first photo, and then I got like the failed receipt, and I was like, brutal. I didn't smile my second, whatever. That would be my my only thing. Definitely smile, be happy to be there. But I had the opposite experience. My first one was like, I was so stoked. And then I got the stupid letter in the mail of me just like happily smiling and it's like, you failed. So just I will fight the smile, but always smile.
I will also say, since we're kind of talking about stuff to do on test day, make sure you find your testing location, like maybe the day before or two, drive to it. No joke, this is how bad I am with directions. The first time I took it, I found the testing site, and then the day of my exam, I like put it in wrong and went to the wrong place. So just bookmark it, like, I don't know, just make it like fail proof. But definitely go find it the day before. That way you know exactly where you're going to.
I would also add, Heather, and you helped me so much with this. They say, right? And so just be aware like of what your IDs are. What the thing says, it's like you need 2 forms of ID, blah, blah, blah. I showed up my first time and I had a passport that was about to expire, but I saved it after I did not pass. And then I showed up with an expired passport plus my ID. Thankfully, they're like willing to take credit cards, but I've heard from others in my cohort in different states that like they were a lot more strict. So just they want 2 IDs, just be aware, be ready. I got lucky. They were willing to take a credit card plus an expired passport, but it could have really changed a lot for me. So just however you're timing it, be aware. 2 IDs, 2 photo IDs, end of story. Because I did have one of my classmates that ended up getting turned away, and it's now can't take it and lost a lot of money.
That's rough. I feel like just over prepare, like bring more than you might think.
I mean, I was calling you. I like said, Heather, I like had like a bag of Ziploc IDs. I'm like, here's 9 student IDs, 3 work IDs, all of my credit cards, expired passports, but how it timed out, yeah, it was strange. So just over prepare and just have the IDs.
Mm-hmm. I like this question in the chat. It was, what did you do fun afterwards? So the first time I took it, I went out with some friends. Like we went out for drinks afterwards because both times I took the exam on a Saturday. So I didn't have to worry about going back to work or anything like that. And then the second time I actually went to a nice dinner with my family. So that was a lot of fun. Definitely plan something afterwards, like no matter what.
And also
So
Heather
funny.
and I, because we're in the same state and we had connected, we had bomb margaritas and queso dip, just to celebrate each other. And just like I would say, like I urge you to connect to people in your state. We happen to have a weird sense of like we ended up on the same chat and we're like, hi, we're an hour away from each other. But it's so awesome to just celebrate with people doing it. And if you don't have them, set up a virtual happy hour, have some wine on camera.
Yeah, it's always fun to connect with people who have taken it too, and you can just celebrate because it really is a big accomplishment to sit for this.
Okay, so I think we are coming up on time, unfortunately, because it's been such a great session. I've learned a lot, and I think a lot of our audience has also learned a lot. Anyone have any final concluding thoughts from the session, either anything that's been said or something they wanted to share with the audience?
Is there a way we can leave our contact info, Daniel? Because I would be happy to answer questions after this too.
Yeah, absolutely. You can put it in the chat or just email me, and I'm happy to share that with everyone. So
Okay, I think I'll email since
Yeah,
this is going on YouTube, right? So
yes,
that
yeah,
instead.
we won't put your personal.
I'm just you've got mine, Daniel. I can just verbally say, hey, feel free to send my info to anyone. I'm super happy to help anyone.
Yeah,
So,
happy to answer
Yeah.
questions.
you got my
Me
info.
too.
Yes.
You're up.
Thank you all. Yes, and I'll share your information with everyone in the course. We won't post that on YouTube, but
I mean,
yeah. So, but the video will be on YouTube, hopefully for other folks to look at and to reference as they're preparing for their own exams. So, thank you all again for participating. Thank you to our panelists for participating, and thank you to everyone for attending and asking great questions. We will hope to see you all soon. So
everyone will do
have a
great.
good night, everyone.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you guys will do
Good
great.
luck, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.